Welcome back to All Things Creepy. I'm your host, Micah James. And this week it is slightly a grab bag, as I'm not talking about one specific person or subject today. I'm talking about 4 people in total that I personally found strange and or scary. Like they fall under that kind of category. But our main topic today, our main subject today is Typhoid Mary. And then the other 3, like I said, kind of just like fell under that umbrella of strange and or scary. So we're going to start with Typhoid Mary, and then we're going to go into our other 3 people. So let's go do that. All right, so let's first, before we talk about Typhoid Mary, let's talk about what this disease is. So typhoid is a disease caused by salmonella, and the rarity of it really depends on the location. For example, it is rare in the US, but less rare in some areas of South Asia. So in terms of like how easy it is for you to get it, it just really depends on where you are. The symptoms of typhoid fever tend to start out slow and appear after up to 1 to 3 weeks after exposure. Early symptoms include your fever starting low and increasing throughout the day and going as high as 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is also 40 degrees Celsius. You will also experience chills, headache, weakness/fatigue, muscle aches, stomach pain, diarrhea, or constipation, and a rash, which can be also symptoms of other diseases. So if you end up feeling any of these symptoms, don't automatically think that it's typhoid fever because it could be something else. Still, go get help if you can. Later symptoms include stomach pain, a swollen stomach, and sepsis, which is basically just an infection that has spread throughout the body, which can lead to death if you don't get the help for it. Very severe symptoms include becoming confused, the inability to pay attention to things around you, and the inability to react to things around you. Typhoid fever is treatable, but if you don't get it treated, you could end up passing away. So that's the very basics of typhoid fever. So I will post a link to all of my sources in the show notes. But if you fear that you have this or like any illness, I am not a medical professional, so please go seek help when appropriate. Now that we know the basics of typhoid fever, let's talk about someone who was a carrier of it but seemed to be immune. Her real name was Mary Mallon. She was born September 23rd, 1869 in Cookstown County, Tyrone, Ireland, and died November 11th, 1938 in North Brother Island, Bronx, New York. She was a typhoid character who allegedly gave rise to multiple typhoid fever outbreaks. Mary immigrated to the U.S. in 1883 and made a living as a domestic servant, and she usually ended up being a cook. There's no clear timeline of when she became a carrier of typhoid, but many believe that it was right around the 1900 mark, as it seems that between 1900 and 1907, almost 24 families fell ill with typhoid in New York City and Long Island, and that's between 1900 and 1907. That is where Mary worked. All these families became ill very shortly after Mary's employment, but she was gone by the time it was traced to her. Like, she just completely disappeared. So a lot of people believed, especially during that time, that she knew that she was a carrier, maybe not specifically of typhoid, but of some sort of disease, and would purposely kind of like pass it on to these families. In 1906, Mary worked for this family of 11, 6 of whom became sick with typhoid in Oyster Bay, New York. The family ended up hiring George Soper, who at the time was New York City's Department of Health sanitary and engineer, and he specialized in typhoid fever studies. There were other investigators involved with this as well, and they all seemed to determine that the outbreak was caused by contaminated water. However, that clearly was not the case, as she ended up moving house to house until 1907, and she had resurfaced when working in a Park Avenue home in Manhattan. A death ended up occurring in this house from the disease, and Soper met with Mary, where he linked all 22 cases to Mary Malone. Mary ended up fleeing again, but authorities and George caught up and committed her to an isolation center in North Brother Island. She was released in 1910, but only under the condition that she should never accept employment that involved handling food. But as you can imagine, she did not commit to that, because 4 years later, an epidemic broke out at a sanatorium in Newfoundland, New Jersey, and Sloan Maternity Hospital in Manhattan, where Mary worked, as you might have guessed, as a cook. Soper caught up to her again in a suburban Westchester County, New York home, and she was returned to North Brother Island, where she ended up staying for the rest of her life. Mary ended up suffering a paralytic stroke in 1932, which ended up leading to her death. There were a total of 51 original cases of typhoid and 3 deaths directly attributed to her and countless more indirectly caused by her, and she herself was immune. Nobody knows exactly why she was immune. I mean, whenever someone is immune to a disease, no one can specifically know why. There's like theories, like maybe she just had just the right combination of like antibodies and stuff like that. And no one knows, or at least that I could find, no one knows exactly why she continued to cook for people when she had this disease, when she was a carrier of typhoid fever. But people can only guess. Like I said, maybe she knew and she, for whatever reason, wanted these families and these people that she cooked for to get sick. But like I said, no one really knows why, at least as far as I could find. If any of you do happen to know a reason, like you have like a source that like gives a reason as to why she potentially knowingly passed this on, let me know, and I will update in a future episode if any of you have any information on that. Okay, so the second part of this episode are the 3 other people that I found that I thought were really interesting. Maybe they're not as scary or strange as Typhoid Mary, but I personally think that they are interesting nonetheless. The first person that we're talking about, besides Typhoid Mary, is Marina David. She was known for only consuming beer for 34 years between 1851 and 1885. And when I say only consuming beer for 34 years, I mean only beer, nothing else. She literally drank no food. She literally drank no water and ate literally no food. She only ingested the strongest and most bitter beers available at the time. It's an absolute complete mystery as to how she survived those 34 years without water and food, but there are 2 possible theories. Theory number 1 is just the fact that her diet caused her to produce excess stomach acid, and that acid helped to break down and digest the sugars in beers, which kind of helped her survive on it for all those years. The second theory is that she possibly had a condition that made her unable to absorb nutrients from other food sources or liquid sources. That's like another topic that I'm going to be covering in another episode, like just like strange like digestive syndromes, I guess you could say. Like there's like pica, where you eat like silver and like metal and stuff like that. So I'll cover that in a future episode. But yeah, like there are multiple like syndromes, like I said, that I guess you could say that, you know, it makes sense as to like that. Just definitely makes sense. The next person is a man by the name of Steve Hobbs. Now, much like Marina, he spent a number of years consuming only one thing, or at least one umbrella of things. For 28 years straight, he ate nothing but meat products, starting in 1982. And what inspired him to do this was like reading a book that claimed humans were meant to eat meat and only meat, and everything else was supposedly unnatural. So he ended up shunning all fruits, veggies, and grains. Now, as you can imagine, this took a big toll on his health, and near the end of the 28 years, in 2010, he had very high cholesterol and developed heart disease. I couldn't find the specific type of heart disease, just like very generically heart disease. Like I said, in 2010, he just finally gave up and he just started eating a more balanced diet. I personally couldn't find any more updates about him. So I don't know how well he's doing today or if he's still even alive. But that's just, so the most up-to-date thing that I have about Steve Hobbs is that he just started eating a more balanced diet in 2010. And now our final subject we're talking about today is Louise Augustine Gleizes. I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I tried to look up a pronunciation and I could not find one. But she is the only documented case of something akin to Benjamin Button syndrome. So in case you've never seen Benjamin Button, let me explain that really quick. So Benjamin Button was a story of this man, this boy who was born as an old man, and then as he got older, he looked younger. And that's basically what happened to Louise. She was alive in, it seems like the early 1900s. At a young age, she looked like an old woman. She even had the gray hair and wrinkles. As she got older, those wrinkles disappeared, her hair turned darker, and she overall just started looking younger. Scientists could not find what caused Louise's condition other than just being caused by a rare genetic mutation. But since she's the only documented case of this specific mutation, I could not find any kind of name for what she could have besides something like Benjamin Button syndrome. And it's totally possible that the story of Benjamin Button was inspired by Louise. I would not be surprised if that was the case. Okay, so I know this episode is on the shorter side, especially after the last 2 weeks. I am trying to work up to consistently having episodes that are 20 to 30 minutes long, so please bear with me while I go through that process. But for now, I am trying to at least consistently make all my episodes a minimum of 15 minutes long. So again, bear with me as I work up to getting longer episodes. On a side note, I am in the very baby steps of a new podcast. Don't worry, I'm not giving up on this one. It's just I want to start a new podcast where it's strictly about horror movies and scary documentaries and TV shows and stuff like that. And it's going to be solely about that. Like I said, it's in the very baby process of coming about. All I know is that it's going to be once a month and that each month the episode's going to have a theme, right? The themes might repeat, but it's going to be 1 month is going to be zombie flicks, another month is going to be found footage, another month is going to be true crime documentaries, that kind of thing. And I'm going to spoil the movies that I watched that month. So if that is something interesting to you guys, please hit me up with some of your favorite horror movies, scary documentaries, whatever it may be, and I'll add them to my list of movies to watch. So with all that being said, I will see you guys next week with another episode of something hopefully really creepy. So be safe out there, guys.